All right, so welcome to this special episode of Needles on the Net, our store podcast for Needles on the Hay. Today I have Meghan Babin and Sloane Rosenthal with me. Say hi, guys. So we're bringing in a new yarn called Hudson West. We're super pumped about it, and we just want to talk to Meghan and Sloane about the yarn, about themselves, about their journey as knitters. So I just want to know what the origin of your yarn is. How did you two meet? What sparked your business partnership? How was the yarn born?
Sure. So Meghan and I know each other from Meghan's days at Interweave. So she was the editor-in-chief of Interweave Knits. Before I did this, I was a lawyer and a freelance knitwear designer, which is a very strange combination, I realize. But I designed a couple of sweaters for Interweave while Meghan was there, and we got to know each other. And then in 2018, both of us were kind of thinking about what was next. I was leaving my law firm, and I was trying to figure out, if I could figure out a full-time life in the fiber industry, what that was going to look like. Meghan was trying to figure out what her post-Interweave project was going to be. And both of us were kicking around the idea of making yarn. I have always been a huge, fiber geek and really fascinated by how yarn is made and how that affects how it works in our finished objects. And so had been sort of thinking about what kind of yarn I might want to make. And it turned out both of us really had the same kind of animating question a thing we wanted to make yarn for. And we were both talking to the same mill. We're both talking to Bat and Kill Fibers in upstate New York, who had spun some yarns Meghan was familiar with and some yarns I had designed with. And MJ Packer, who runs that mill, said to both of us, "Hey, you guys are friends and you're both talking about this same thing. Why don't you talk to each other and not just to me?" And so we traded at Rhinebeck that year skeins of sample yarn we had made. And both of us liked where the other one was going. For what became Forge and Weld was a little bit further along in its development process. And so we decided to go with that as kind of our first two bases. And about, I guess, a couple weeks after Rhinebeck that year, kind of said, okay, all right, let's pull the trigger. We're ready to go. So we had a whirlwind first year of getting ready to launch, because we launched then in November of 2019. And then we've been at this for just under 2 years now. It'll be 2 years on November 13th was our launch day. So that's sort of how we started, was kind of a shared design aesthetic and a shared set of kind of animating problems we were going after.
And it sounds like you guys are like yarn soulmates.
Yeah. That would be accurate. That's like a very endearing thing to think as well.
It is. That is really sweet. Yeah. No, we
it's just
very
the way
much had the same.
Describe it. It's like some kind of force brought you together.
Yeah. I mean, Sloane's design aesthetic pretty much like lined up perfectly with what I was curating at the time for Interweave Knits, and we just lined up really well. So it was a meant to be thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes it seem even more special than it already is. Yeah. So you've been talking about like this yarn that you want to animate, this problem that you want to solve with your yarn. So like, what space does your yarn occupy?
Yeah. So we both love cabled sweaters. That's how we met, was over a cabled sweater and a series of cabled sweaters that followed that cabled sweater.
Yep. Many cabled sweaters happened.
Yes, many of them. Even though I'm wearing a colorwork sweater now, because it's like got something happening at the yoke that you can see, but mostly we're both cable people.
Absolutely. As we can attest from our most recent knitwear collection. That's like
we're cable people.
Well, that's why I think that's why we get along. Cables are my thing as well, and it's the cable sweater that actually drew me to you, the Brewster sweater by Cheryl Toy.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's how I discovered you guys, because every time I see a gorgeous cable sweater, I need to know everything about it.
Yeah. So we were really looking for, when I first started knitting, I made a lot of what I call like weekend dog walking sweaters. Or like now I call them bus stop sweaters, because I have elementary school age children, and they're the sweaters that you made and you had fun making them, but like you can't really wear them in your actual life. And when I first started knitting, I was practicing law in DC. So I had a very stuffy work environment in terms of what I could wear. So the like speckled hand dyed yarns and the variegated stuff and all those things, like they were cool to knit with, but I couldn't wear those things in my everyday life. So what we really wanted was a yarn that would be functionally great for cables, right? That would have good stitch definition and roundness and enough that you could kind of, I always talk about seeing your work, because if you're going to do a lot of knitting, and a cabled sweater for an adult is a lot of knitting, no matter what weight it's in, you want to be able to see it. But also yarns that would give you that, it's the, oh my gosh, you made your sweater, not the, oh, you made your sweater look, right? And something that would feel very much like ready to wear, levels of finish. So that was really the kind of animating goal. And, my husband always talks about like keeping the focus on real wearability, right? Of things that look like, I hate to use the term real sweaters, but that's kind of what we're going for, right? Is that, that polished kind of professional looking finish that you can wear anywhere and really fits in your wardrobe.
Yeah. And we, as knitters, like we should be able to achieve those kind of results, right? With the right tools and the right mindset, for sure. So you feel the same way about it, Meghan? Is that what you were trying to do when you first started out?
Oh, absolutely. And it's like we were specifically trying to create yarn like to enhance cables and to like be able to really enhance what we love to design the most. But it ended up just being this really great versatile yarn that is beautiful for not just cables and texture, but also looks beautiful in color work as well, because it is a semi-worsted spun yarn, which we will get to shortly. But it just like beautifully fills out, especially after blocking. So you get these like beautiful impressionistic color work fabric, and as well as just like crisp definition in your cables, but still having that beautiful halo from having a semi-worsted spun yarn.
So there's nothing it can't do, is what you're saying.
Basically, it's very like it's kind of like I still am not tired. I've been knitting with it almost exclusively, pretty much for like over 2 years now, and I'm not tired of it in the least. Like I'm excited to work with it every single time I wind up a new skein. So it's like it's not getting old, and I just don't ever anticipate it getting old, because it is so specifically like perfect for everything that I love to make.
I think the other thing we were really focusing on was kind of balancing softness and durability, which is a really core feature of the yarn. I've had this sweater for 2 years now. I wear it all the time. I've deep-pilled it once,
It looks great. Like it looks, it looks like you just made it.
Yeah. And I often wear my cuffle, which I'm not wearing currently, but I wear it all the time. And I've only had to, I think since I made it last winter, I've deep-pilled it one time, but I often, like there are times where I've often fallen asleep in it, and it's just so warm, comfortable and cozy, and like I can wear it comfortably against my skin without any sort of itching or anything like that. So it's just a wonderful, cozy, versatile yarn.
So at what point in the process, like after you created your yarn, you brought it to the market, did you think, okay, yes, we've caught on to something here. This is going to be a success. We really need to like drive ahead with this.
I mean, Rhinebeck, like our soft launch at Rhinebeck, before our real launch, we did a soft launch at the Babin booth, and it was kind of like, it was a surprisingly large gaggle of people. And we had no way to know how, like, what was going to happen and how many people were going to come. And it turned out that it was pretty much like immediate that we got confirmation that what we were doing was we were on the right track, and to keep doing it and to make more yarn. So, I mean, it pretty much happened before we even launched.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, when we got the first like swatches back from designers who we asked to contribute to our launch collection, and I was like, oh, people understand how to use the thing the way I intended it to be used, right? And it's a little bit that kind of authorship thing where you're like, well, people understand my meaning. When we saw that kind of confirmation from designers that the things they saw in the yarn were the things we saw in it, that was like a huge relief to like, okay, this concept is immediately obvious to people.
It needs
and
no
our
explanation. It isn't pretentious. It's just like highly usable and great. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So like, it must feel really good the moment that you kind of put your baby out into the world that people just immediately get on board with it. That sounds fantastic. It must have been a real rush for you guys.
It was a really fun couple of weeks. It was really like scary and overwhelming because you're still just like, oh my God, are people but is it gonna really work? So
yeah, when you're a
very
baby,
exciting that it did.
Like that. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I guess we have to make like a lot more yarn. How do we do that?
Yeah,
scaling up is always so tough. Eh? Like that's where I, as a yarn store owner, that's where I find like a lot of people trip up, is that they're hesitant to take that next step and invest in like hiring staff and expanding their production and things like that. They just kind of stick with, the one person show and struggle to meet the demand, right? And then I think eventually it becomes so scarce that people stop trying, right? So yeah, so the scaling up is definitely like make or break.
Yeah.
So can you, like, we get a lot of questions in the shop about where the yarn comes from, how the animals were treated. Can you tell us a little bit about the animal husbandry behind your yarn and whether you guys have made sort of any commitments in terms of animal welfare and the environment?
Yeah. So one of the first questions everybody asks about, or when people ask about this, one of the first questions we get is about mulesing. And we use all non-mulesed merino. Virtually all, anybody who purchases merino top from chargers, which is virtually all kind of small to mid-sized yarn companies who are buying top from the sort of leading merino processor in the US, that's all non-mulesed. And we are too big now to trace everything we buy to individual farms. At the beginning, we bought the Corriedale side of the yarn we make a merino Corriedale blend. And at the beginning, we bought the Corriedale from individual farmers who we had met and talked to, or MJ had met and talked to. We can't do that anymore. We're buying top from Chargers on the merino side and a company called Ashland Bay on the Corriedale side, and a little bit from RH Lindsay, who's another broker. Mm-hmm. So those folks have spoken to farmers, and have met those people, but we can't trace back to individual farms anymore. But there is that overall level of accountability and focus is still there. And, Chargers also makes additional kind of controls about animal welfare and the environment. And so we comply with kind of their overall standards. And it's important to know, sheep farming in the US is mostly an activity that's designed to produce meat and dairy. And that's just the reality, that other than people who are farming, 6 to 10 animals at a hobby scale in their backyard, for the most part, we're talking about animals that are being raised for meat and dairy, and the wool that they give off as a byproduct. So companies like us who are buying domestic wool are creating a market for high quality domestic wool and giving farmers an incentive to raise their animals in a way that maximizes fiber production and that produces, higher quality fleece, and that complies with the kinds of standards that people like us want in terms of animal welfare. But fundamentally, we're talking about a meat and dairy based industry, right? That's the nature of sheep farming in the US. So we're trying to help create strong demand for, really well cared for fiber. And we buy, particularly on the Corriedale side, we buy, very fine, high quality Corriedale. There is a bigger range there. But we're not buying from sheep that are, raised exclusively for that purpose. That wouldn't really be possible at the scale we're at.
Yeah.
And then in terms of go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, after we were talking with my staff the other day, we were talking about how we had never really thought about, what the end game was for the sheep. But probably most of the sheep get eaten that our sweaters come from, right? So we were saying, well, the sweater is the lamb's legacy in the world, like you're creating a legacy for the sheep.
Right. Well, and we're creating ranching is not easy, right? Neither ranching sheep nor making yarn in this country is easy. And by, 10 and 15 years ago, many sheep ranchers were burning their fiber rather than selling it because they couldn't get a price for it that made it even worth it to like do a high quality shearing, for example. So, and you have to shear sheep. That's a basic animal welfare requirement. You have to shear them.
Yeah.
So again, what we're doing is creating demand for farmers to do better on that part of the puzzle. And then environmentally, there's a carbon footprint involved in manufacturing because you got to ship stuff and you got to make stuff. But we do try to minimize that as much as we can. We do all of our production on the Eastern Seaboard. So the yarn is spun in upstate New York, it's dyed in North Carolina, and then it gets shipped out of our fulfillment center in South Jersey. So we're trying to minimize travel. We try to use, LTL shipments as much as we can rather than doing tons of small parcel, just to try to keep that as streamlined as we can on that side of the house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Meghan, do you want to talk about packaging on the environmental side?
Yeah. So in the very beginning, we immediately decided to do eco-friendly packaging that is compostable. So from the very beginning, especially on the retail side, we've been sending out all of our packages in compostable packaging since the very beginning. And that's something that we plan to continue to do, especially like that of course, we're using boxes and all sorts of things for the wholesale side, but our commitment to eco-friendly packaging is something that we're sticking with. And we'll have even nicer packaging coming soon.
Yeah, I feel
the part about growing is that you can invest more in your pretty packaging that is also environmentally friendly.
Well, you guys do a great job. I ordered off of your retail site just to see what the experience was like for Canadians. And while the shipping was expensive, so we'll fix that. I have stock in Canada, but your packaging was fantastic. I was delighted by it.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Yeah, thank you. And it's not just like the mailers themselves are eco-friendly and compostable, but also the tissue paper, the stickers, literally everything is all environmentally friendly.
Yeah, I think people will be really happy to learn that. Like I see that, we put a lot of plastic into the world as retailers, and we want to go that route too. We mainly use cardboard boxes right now, which is better than plastic bags.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
it was just like when we were sending things back and forth when we were first developing the yarn, and it was just like so many plastic packages were coming into the house, and it's like, it was like grossing me out because I read that that mailers, just like general shipping mailers, are basically like the same thing as a plastic grocery bag that you would get. And we just throw them away. We just throw them in the trash can. Whereas we've gotten conditioned ourselves to either not use disposable grocery bags anymore, or just like we package them and return them to the store. But for mailers, you're just chucking them in the garbage for the most part. So it was like, oh man, we really need to find something that isn't just like chucking plastic into the ocean. So that was really what sparked that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it's a great idea, and it's super cute too.
Thank you.
Looks really great when it comes. And speaking of cute, I'm wondering, you're both designers, so would you share with our viewers what your favorite design is and your favorite design of each other's?
My favorite design of Meghan's is also her favorite design of hers, so I'm going to let her talk about it first.
Yeah, the sweater that I just made for our fall collection, Savin, is my favorite one that I've ever made ever. And it is just covered. It's covered in cables, and I will embarrassingly admit that it was inspired by the silver screen, and it is inspired by the Knives Out sweater that Chris Evans wore in that film. And I just I didn't want to make a replica of it. I just wanted to use it as a jumping off point to create something of my own. So I kept one of the cables from that original sweater, and I just went for it and redid the shoulder shaping so that it was flattering for all people. And it's just absolutely my most favorite design. And I'm actually making it for the third time right now because I'm hosting a KAL for it. And both of the samples that I made for the photo shoot, I made a menswear version, which is the one that I was wearing constantly. because it's super cozy, and the version I made in blue in lake are both in our trunk show right now. So I'm making a third one. I thought, KL is a really good way to get my sweater back on my body. So that one is definitely my favorite sweater.
It is gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I'll admit that I hadn't seen Knives Out, but I watched it after I heard that that's what your sweater was inspired by, just to see what the inspiration was. Yeah. It's kind of a fun.
I was like, it is. It's such a fun movie. And I was just like, and the internet exploded after that. After that movie came out, like specifically the Knitterverse exploded, and everybody was like, we got to make this sweater. And I was like, well, I would like to make it, but I also want to like make it my own too. So that's really where all that came from. And it is, it's worked flat in pieces from the bottom up, and it's a raglan, which is like I've had a couple of people ask me why I chose to make a seamed raglan, and it's really because it's so heavily cabled that the seams provide structure so that it doesn't stretch out over time. And the only part of it that's actually worked in the round is the neckband that you pick up after you seam it all together, and it's a fold over neckband, so it's truly like old school fisherman style sweater where it's like the neck's not going anywhere. It's really cozy. It's not going to stretch out. And it was actually like, we shot the collection in the remnant bands of Ida going through the hurricane, and it was pouring out intermittently that day. So both sweaters were soaked by the end of the day, and they were wearing them. So it was like, and it was amazing that they didn't stretch out at all during that. Like they performed as a fisherman sweater should. They got soaked. They didn't go anywhere.
I think this is such a good point, right? Because top-down sweaters are all the rage right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have people say, I never seam anything, it's too much work. What's even the point when you can do a top-down sweater? But it just gives you that structure. It gives you the more tailored look, because when you're knitting a top-down sweater, everything basically rests on that neckline. So it will, if you're knitting something heavy, it's gonna
stretch out.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And my favorite design of Sloane's, I mean, I have so many, but I love Amelia that she just made for this collection. It's so beautiful and comfortable and wearable, and just like fun to knit too. Covered in her like beautiful signature cables with the beautiful like strong V cables on the front, but also her sweater from last fall, Marley, is stunning as well. And it has this beautiful V-neck and like clever shaping. And I love both of those designs so much. Cables, all the cables.
Thanks, Meghan. My favorite design of Meghan's is Savin also. It's just got so many different things that are interesting about it. And every time I look at it, there's like another thing about it that's cool that I notice. And I got, I get to be around for the process. So I also got to see all the things that went into it. And that like will always make it really special to me. I have now seen the inspiration for it lots and lots of times too, but on the drafting front.
True.
That was really, it was really fun to see you work on that project and work through that. And I love the problem solving of design. So that was like neat because it was a complex thing. My favorites of mine, I think, I'm going to be lame and say the one I just did, because that's always the first thing in my mind. But I really like that sweater. And it was an interesting like design challenge I was trying to solve about. I had these cables that I really loved, and I knew kind of what silhouette I wanted it to be, but figuring out how to make that construction work best in Forge and find that balance in a worsted was fun. And I just really love how the resulting sweater feels. And I am going to make another one for myself because I lost mine to the trunk show also.
And in your sweaters.
It's like, oh man, it's like, you make something that you love so much, and then it's like, bye for 2 years. It's
right. Well, and it's hard because they never come back quite the same, right? Yeah. This one I've kept out of the trunk show, and so it like looks relatively more pristine, but the ones that go away, it's a little harder when they come back. But my other like surprise favorite is actually Warren, which I did for last winter. I don't do a lot of color work, not current sweater notwithstanding. I don't do a ton of color work. And that was a really interesting, like, it's a mosaic color work piece. It's done in pieces and seams. So you still get all of the normal, like, advantages of a seamed sweater in terms of structure and tailoring and things like that. It's also just got a really super cozy turtleneck, and it's just like a wonderful winter sweater to wear. Seaming it was
super well.
Yeah.
Great.
I like turtlenecks. I spend a large part of my year in the Great White North because my folks live in northwestern Wyoming, where it is cold. So I like warm sweaters, and I run cold anyway. So I'm down with the turtleneck as an option. So I really liked that one. It was a really an interesting puzzle to figure out. And it was one of those that when I put it on, I was like, oh, it really does look exactly like I planned. Cool. Because that's still a fun part of the design process. So.
You guys have so many fantastic designs, and that's the pattern support for your yarn is like, it's incredible given that the yarn's only been out for 2 years.
Yeah, we often think about that. Like we were often discussing that lately. Like we've published 81 designs since we've launched in November.
That is insane.
That's a lot. Overachievers, both of us.
But all the patterns are gorgeous. Like there's no duds.
Thank you.
You don't look at it and think, oh, there's only 2 things here I want to knit.
I mean, like we hope that there is something in there for literally everybody. You know, like I do design a lot of unisex menswear. So like we really want to make sure that everybody's there and everybody's represented. And we also, since the very beginning, have been size inclusive in all of our pattern grading. So all of our designs, all of our garments are designed to fit a 30 to 64 inch chest. So, I mean, they range from anywhere from 30 inches finished up to like 70 plus inches. So there really is something there for everybody. And we do our best with our grading, and we're always working on improving it as well for a better fit, especially in the larger sizes.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things I wanted to bring up was size inclusivity, because that's a big issue right now. We have people all shapes and sizes, that are knitters at our shop. And I really appreciate the fact that you guys really take that to heart. And especially that you're working on the grading so that I would assume that, if you do a larger, say a cabled sweater in one of the larger sizes, you're not going to have, a little cable pattern on the front and a bunch of like reverse stockinette on the sides.
No. Yeah. That was like a thing that I did for Babin. I just like there's the flanking cables. I repeated the flanking cables as like the sizes increased. So I made it and on the arms as well. I mean, so it's really important to do that so that the design, you don't lose anything with the design, and it doesn't, you don't feel like you're losing something if you're not making it look, the exact same size as the sample. And, I really believe that clothes are meant to fit your body and not the other way around. It's like clothes are for you need clothes to cover your body as it is. And everybody should be able to have access to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as a knitter, you should have the ability to create the perfect garment to fit your body.
Absolutely.
It's couture, that's the point.
We try to pick.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, we try to be thoughtful about silhouette selection too, right? And in how we work with designers on developing their schematics and stuff to try to make sure that we're actually designing things that are going to look good in every size, not just that we've done the math that you can make it in whatever size you want. And that's part of kind of our overall commitment to kind of wearability and kind of sanity in what we're doing, of that we really want them to be clothes that feel like clothes that you would want to wear and that are going to work, for a range of people.
Yeah, we really like being able to, there's no greater honor or that to me than having somebody ask me where I bought my sweater. If somebody thinks that it was made by a machine instead of by a human, I'm like, oh, by the way, I made this, it's like, that is,
I feel like
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm always like, oh yeah, this is a good one. It looks like a machine did it,
Yeah. I'm just like,
totally.
It's just, I just feel like, oh, I made real clothes. I made something that people would not mistake as home, something homemade, or I just really, I just really think that that's a cool thing whenever somebody asks me where I bought my handmade sweater.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like one of the major keys to this, and I'm always harping on this, is you got to block your sweater. You got to block your.
Oh yeah, and
that
block your swatches and make big swatches. Make big swatches. That's like my other thing. You really want your sweaters to come out well. Make a big swatch and block it.
Yeah. One of our closest friends is like public enemy number one on this front, since she in front of us made about a 3-inch swatch the other day, and we were like, what are you doing?
Babin, she made a swatch this big. I was like, girl.
It's a little like the cobbler's children have no shoes, but it's okay.
It's human nature, right? Like we're always looking for the swatch shortcut, but there's no way around it. You just gotta do it. Sometimes you get lucky, but
I'm a weirdo. I love swatching. Like it just makes me so happy to be able to experiment with cables. And it's also because I'm a designer too, that like I enjoy that process a lot more. I understand that people love to like get into their project and not have to like go through swatching, but it really is so important when you're making a garment.
I always tell my students, you can spend the time swatching or you can spend it ripping, right? Yeah. Those are the choices.
That's a good one.
If you are willing to rip out half your sweater because it doesn't fit, Godspeed. I'm not. So.
But most people aren't. It's funny. The people who knit and rip out the most are the ones that are the most comfortable doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
Because we've all made so many mistakes. Like I always find that when I'm talking to new knitters, they're always surprised that we frog all the time. Like people that knit all the time. We knit all the time, we frog all the time. And we frog to get things right, to get that finished look that we want. So I'm just gonna wrap this up a little bit here, but I wanted to end with, the fact that we're going to be the first stockist for your yarn in Canada. And we're really excited about that. I can't wait. Our shipment is on the way.
Yeah.
And I just wanted you guys to give the pitch to our clients. Like, what is the elevator speech? Why should they give your yarn a try? And what do you hope that they get out of that experience of knitting with your yarn?
Yeah, well, we talk about making forever yarn for forever knits, right? And that's kind of that's a lodestar for us, is that we're making yarn that we think will hold up well for things that you want to wear forever. And we design things for it that we think will fit into your wardrobe forever. Right. And things that are going to give you that polish and that durability and that lovely hand to work with while you're knitting. And that's really what we've always been aiming for, is a joy to knit and then a joy to have the thing when you're done. And that's, we think the properties of the yarn, whether it's ply structure or the fact that it's a semi-worsted, so it has that really lovely bloom, and the fact that it's made in a traceable, sustainable, ethical way, are all things that, give us joy when we work with it every day, and that we think, produce a finished object that is really quite special. So.
And it makes a beautiful, soft, woolly sweater for the Great White North as well. Yeah. It's like, it's a perfect fit for Canada. I hope to be able to wear several of my sweaters in Canada when I come and visit.
Yeah.
Well, maybe when things get a little bit less weird at the border, you guys, you guys can come visit. Maybe we can do like an event or something like that.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Have made the drive up there before. Willing to do it again. It's a beautiful ride too.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you go through, like I went through New York one time, sort of through the Finger Lakes and everything.
Yeah,
and
it's
come
beautiful.
up that way through Gananoque. So that is a really nice little trek. So before I finish, is there anything else you would like to say or share with the knitters of Canada?
Meghan, what's on your list?
Just hope that you love working with our yarn, and that you have access to it more easily now, that you don't have to pay ridiculous, international shipping fees. So you can try it out without having to commit to an international shipping fee, and that, we're really excited to share it with you all and want to hear your feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you doing this with me today. And we can't wait to launch your yarn on November 3rd.
Awesome. We are so excited. Thanks so much, Deanna.
Thank you so much.